All right, let me ask you, Doc. Let's get into the whole the Bengals thing. Your thoughts about the game. What struck you beginning to end that stood out for you in that game?
They didn't block well enough. I mean, that's a simplistic answer, but it's a pretty easy answer. They did not, when they did give Joe Burrow time, when he had time, say at the end of the first half in that last drive, and to start the second half, they produced 10 points fairly quickly. He had that extra split second to look over the field and throw the ball. He was, most of the time, he was under duress. Um, Kansas City played better than I thought it would from that perspective, and I thought that was a difference in the game, unlike most people around here who thought the refs rigged the game in favor of the Chiefs. I thought it was based on real stuff that happened on the field, not on clown show conspiracy theories.
Well, look, Gene Steratore, I don't know if you heard the story today, comes out and he talked about, in his opinion, there were a number of calls, especially that final scramble by Mahomes, where Osai committed the penalty, gave him the extra 15 yards. They kicked the field goal. They win the game. He said clearly there were one or two holding calls. The officials just completely blew it. I'm not into the conspiracy thing either. I like the way that Brian Billick put it on the show yesterday. You can argue with calls in every single game, but the administration of the game was terrible. I've never seen a play redone. I announced football games for 25 years in the NFL. I have never seen a play that was done over again.
Well, the way they explained it and the way the rule is, it was the right call. I mean, maybe most people have never heard a crowd that loud. Maybe most games are not that intense. That was a hard game to officiate. I mean, I'm not making excuses for those guys. They blow a lot of calls, and it raises a legitimate point that's been raised in the past as to whether some of these officials, Thom, are simply too old to be doing this anymore. They can't keep up with what they're trying to officiate. That's a legitimate gripe. But I think they got that call right. If you do notice the replay, you do see, I guess it's the back judge, the guy who was supposed to have blown the whistle that nobody could hear, running in as the play was snapped. That leads me to believe that, yes, he saw that clock was still running after an incomplete pass, and he was going to stop the action. He blew the whistle, and nobody could hear it. So, I mean, people can complain about the way that situation came about and I guess the uniqueness of it, but I don't see anybody saying that it was the wrong call. I think it was the right call. The administration of it was clunky, but hell, you got 70,000 people screaming their lungs out. I thought it was a hard game to officiate, partly for that reason. I didn't think it was a great game for the refs, but by no means did I think that anybody had a hand in trying to change the outcome to benefit TV ratings because Roger Goodell and the league hates the Bengals. That's just ridiculous, and it makes people who say that stuff look stupid.
Yeah, I agree with you on that 100%. So now you move forward, and you look at this team, and we were debating it before you came on, and figuring out what you need to win a Super Bowl. Their defense was outstanding this year. Whether or not Lou Anarumo gets a chance to be a head coach, we'll know in the next 2-3 weeks, whatever it might be. It doesn't appear to be trending in that direction, but you never know. So you assume for a second he's going to be back, so you have one of the best defensive coordinators around. They'll have to make some personnel decisions on that side of the ball, the Von Bells, the Jesse Bates, the Eli Apples of the world, the Jermaine Pratts of the world, those guys. But, Doc, for me, when we were making a comment earlier, for me, of the 4 teams left standing, the Bengals were the only one that did not have a dominant, and I mean game-changing dominant, defensive lineman. For me, that's got to be priority number one in this offseason.
Or an edge rusher, a Von Miller type, Um, the kid from Dallas whose name escapes me right
Parsons,
now.
Michael Parsons.
Yeah, you're right. Jones probably was the most important player in that game the other day. The Eagles kid who did the same thing to the 49ers, maybe the most important player in that game.
Yep.
I think they thought they had that in Trey Hendrickson. I don't know that he quite had as good a year as he had last year, although that would have been pretty hard to do. He had a great year last year. I think you're right. I think something else, though. I think that every team, especially the Bengals, I would think, needs to take a hard look at how they play offense. If I'm the Bengals and I know that Joe Burrow, the difference between having 2 seconds of time to throw and 2.4 or 5 is so huge, maybe I think about having a fullback. Maybe I think about leaving a blocking tight end into block just about every passing down. I don't try to get cute or fancy. I've already got 3 of the better wide receivers in the game on the same team, and I've already seen what Joe Burrow can do when he has time. I change it up a little on offense and place a much greater emphasis on giving Burrow that extra 0.3 of a second. And I know they need the edge rusher. Sure, everybody does. But I think that's a lot harder to get than simply tweaking your offense and the way you run it to give Burrow all the time he needs.
Well, it's interesting you talk about the fullback because that has been, we're seeing it now evolve the other way with the tight end position. For a long time, tight ends were in vogue. Then you had a bunch of offensive-minded guys that never used a tight end. I mean, for a decade, there were really only 2 or 3 really good tight ends. Now there are a lot of really good tight ends. The only offensive coach, to my knowledge, at least that I watch on a semi-regular basis, who very much utilizes the tight end, ironically, a kid from Lodi, Ohio, is Kyle Juszczyk, and that's Kyle Shanahan out in San Francisco. Juszczyk is going to the Pro Bowl every year, maybe because he's the only fullback in the NFL, but he's a guy that, clearly they utilize the fullback. It's not a bad idea. Go ahead, please.
The Ravens have used, I guess, Patrick Ricard. He's about a 290-pound fullback. But you can scheme around great pass rushes, and the Bengals have done that to a large extent. They run shorter routes. They run shorter drops. Burrow has gotten really good at getting the ball out quickly. But in a game like the other day, when one guy is just doing it to you play after play, sure could use an extra guy to block. I mean, given the quality of the wide receivers this team has, do you really need another wide receiver or even a receiver, another in the pattern? I don't think so. I mean, Hurst was pretty good this year catching balls. I'd rather have him blocking. I'd rather have him blocking so Burrow has time to find one of the 3 really good guys he's got.
Yeah, and that was a big hit in that game, and a lot of people have not talked about, and that was the injury to Tyler Boyd. Because, we have seen so many times over the last couple of years where Burrow has been healthy, where for whatever reason, maybe they're double teaming this guy or double teaming that guy. A lot of that stuff's way over my pay scale. But all of a sudden, there'll be that game once every 3, 4, 5 weeks where Boyd, busts out for 110, 105 yards and 2 touchdowns in a game. And I thought Romo did a fabulous job there on the Bengals' last 2 drives of pointing out, without Boyd in the game, they were doubling up on Huggins, they're doubling up on Chase, and that's why Hurst was so wide open on that 3rd down and 14 to temporarily keep that drive alive. I still come back to, Doc, that same thing, though, and I made a big deal of it yesterday. And look, I've given Zach Taylor a lot of love on this show here over the last couple of weeks. But I still get back to the fact that you've got the ball. You don't want Mahomes to get the ball. You get 7 yards on a first down just inside your own 40. 2 more first downs, you kick the field goal and win the game. And you're throwing 25 and 40-yard bombs down the field on 2nd and 3 and 3rd and 3. I didn't get it.
I mean, yeah. that's hard to understand. I didn't hear anybody ask Taylor specifically about that. Maybe they saw a look that they liked, the matchup that they wanted, and thought they could hit it. But I mean, common sense says in that situation that you 1 second and 3, maybe you try to use up a little clock and get the first down, and they didn't do that. I don't know. I'm not one of those guys that's big on second guessing strategy or managers who call this or that or the other. I'm not as smart as most of the people who watch these games, evidently, because I don't harp on or see a lot of this stuff that I guess is pretty obvious. I mean, I did when that occurred. I said, well, yeah, maybe they could have gone another way, but I tend to give coaches and managers the benefit of the doubt more than I should, probably, because they're there. They're right in the middle of it. They're playing a game I'm watching in the press box or on TV, and I don't know if they think that they've got a favorable matchup on one side that they believe they can exploit for a big gain. I don't know that. I'm just watching TV, so I tend to give them a break on that stuff.
Yeah, see, I don't give them breaks. I mean, I don't give them breaks. I mean, it's their job to know the game. They've got a guy upstairs. They've got a guy upstairs that's an offensive coordinator that can see everything going on better than the head coach. We've talked about that before. You know, for baseball coaches, baseball managers, and for head football coaches, they have the worst seat in the house of being able to tell what the hell is going on. They really do. But, you know, look, when you're talking about trying to win a Super Bowl, and I loved what Zach Taylor said yesterday, that as a play caller and his staff, that they have to get better just like players have to get better, and that he feels like their growth the last 2 years as a staff, coordinators, him as a head coach, special teams, all the stuff, they've gotten better, and I think we all have to agree with that. Even as this season went on, I thought they got better.
Well, they're all young guys.
Yeah.
And they're certainly young in terms of their experience in the NFL. Lou Anarumo may be whatever. I don't know what he is, 40, 45. But he hasn't been in the league very long, you know. Zach Taylor hasn't been in the league very long, and he was never even a coordinator before he got this job. So I agree. I think that the coaching, especially this year, went up leaps and bounds. I mean, how can you fault Lou Anarumo for the job he did? How can you fault Zach Taylor? I mean, look what happened to the Rams.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I know they lost a bunch of players to injury, but still, Taylor has a team back in a position to go to the Super Bowl a year after they're in the Super Bowl. Unless you're the Patriots, that hasn't happened very often. So, I think that they're good, and they're only going to get better if they can keep that staff together.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was around when Andy Reid was just getting the job in Philadelphia. I think if you compare to right now, and look, we'll see what happens moving forward. Most people feel like Reid is one of the top 2, if not the best coach in the NFL right now. I'm not saying over the long haul with Belichick, but right now, Reid, by many, is considered to be the best head coach in the league. I think Zach Taylor, if you just look at the last 2 years, now again, he had Burrow, and, you know, Andy Reid had Donovan McNabb, who was a great player, couldn't win the Super Bowl, but a great player. Now he's got Mahomes, who's a great player, has won a Super Bowl, going to his 3rd one. The Taylor is trending in that direction. I'm curious because so many people, and this is one of those things that I look at, Doc, and you've seen this before in all sports. I hear people saying all the time, Tim McGee, by the way, yesterday vehemently disagreed with this comment. But all I read all the time is Joe Burrow's going to give the Bengals a hometown discount. What if he doesn't give the Bengals a hometown discount? Does that make him a bad guy?
Of course not. No, I mean, no. It's a business. And if the NFL and the people who run it and the people who run your team have a chance to cut your throat, they will, because it's a business. Why should the player be all benevolent and say, oh yeah, you know, I love playing here? No, you know, you have a finite amount of time to make as much money as you can make. And I don't know what the average lifespan of a quarterback is. I think a running back or just anybody in general overall is about 4 years. I mean, what if you and I had a 4-year career? We wouldn't say, I love working here, so I'm going to let you guys underpay me. No, no, he's going to take what he can get and get it while the getting's good. He's under no obligation to take any hometown, offer some hometown discount. If anything, the team should say, you're so important to us that we're going to pay you more than we should pay you. We're going to pay you more than the going rate of the best quarterback in the NFL.
I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happens. I mean, the Bengals are $44 million looking ahead to next year under the salary cap. It's been well documented, all this money coming in, the naming rights to the stadium, that basically they've seen this on the horizon. Once Burrow proved that he was worthy of the number 1 pick in the draft and what he's capable of doing for this franchise, and they basically have built up a war chest for this thing, knowing that the more money they have guaranteed, the less money they have as far as the salary cap is concerned. And Doc, it's the first time in a long time that I can honestly say I trust the people down there to know what they're doing.
Well, we'll see, won't we? They've always paid so-called skilled position players. I mean, Mike Brown loves skilled position players. He might not love Andrew Whitworth as much as a skilled position player and didn't pay him, but he'll pay Joe Burrow the going rate, whatever that happens to be at the time. I'm pretty certain he won't pay him any more than that, though.
Yeah. Well, you got a good point. So what do we do now, Doc, with all our time? Well, the Bengals are done, sports-wise. I mean, do you get the vibe? And I'll end with this. I want to ask you this question. I was bouncing around on Saturday and had to pop in some different places that had televisions on, sports televisions on. A lot of different places. Workout place, some other places I was popping in and out of. Not one place did I walk in had the Xavier basketball game on. And they played a huge game on Saturday against Creighton. I mean, Creighton's got a good team. Xavier's having a great year. There wasn't one television in the place that had the basketball game on. I don't know how many people watched the UC Houston game right after that was over. That was a great game. UC might have played its best game of the season. What do we get excited about? What are we following now?
Well, I've always said that, especially lately, the day after the NFL season is over is when the college basketball season begins. So these days, you got college basketball has about a 7-week season, right? It runs from the second week in February until the end of March, and that's just the way it is. Xavier is Xavier. They've got a extremely loyal fan base, but it's kind of constrained. It's kind of limited. Xavier is what Xavier is. 10-250 at Cintas Center every game. Not 10-249, not 10-251. And I've joked every once in a while. That's probably every Xavier fan in town is at the Xavier basketball game. That's not true, obviously, but it seems that way sometimes. It's a very well run, obviously excellent program that is not even second fiddle in this town, because you got the Bengals and you have UC and maybe even the Reds and FC Cincinnati that have a greater following than Xavier. So it doesn't surprise me that there were no TVs turned to the X game, especially when the Bengals are still playing football.
All right, Doc. Well, we'll continue to plod forward. We've got college basketball, as you said, now on the radar, and we've got baseball coming up around the corner. Pitchers and catchers reporting. Not a lot of enthusiasm for the Reds, but they are going to play this season, and so we're going to be following them and getting your thoughts on it. And so thank you for your time today, and as always, themorningline.substack.com.
Great. Thank you, brother.